Good afternoon. Today is Friday, the 3rd of April, 2020. I'm speaking to you today before the Shabbat HaGadol, before the Shabbat that precedes the festival of Passover, of Pesach. And I'm speaking to you today from the pulpit, from the lectern here at Bevis Mark Synagogue, uniquely positioned so that the rabbi is speaking towards the Heichal, never with his back towards it. And I'm speaking to you from here today because traditionally the rabbi of the community, or the Chacham as he was called, would address the Kahal at least on two occasions. On this Shabbat HaGadol, as well as on Shabbat Shuvah, the Shabbat between Rosh Hashanah and Yom HaKippurim. In fact, in the archives of the synagogue, there are the actual sermon notes from Chacham Meldela and others, often labeled on the top either Shabbat HaGadol or Shabbat Shuvah. And so it's appropriate for me to speak to you from this place today, being that I will not be able to address you from this historic place tomorrow. And this year is a very important Shabbat HaGadol, a very special Shabbat HaGadol, because it's the actual Shabbat HaGadol. Now, what do I mean by that? It says in the Torah, in the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 3, that Dabru al kol adat b'nei Yisrael lemor, speak to the entire congregation of Israel, saying, Be'asor lachodesh hazeh, on the 10th day of the month of Nisan, v'yichu lahem ish seh lebeit avot seh lebayit, you shall take a lamb to each house, a lamb to each household. And in fact, tomorrow, Shabbat HaGadol, is in fact the 10th of the month of Nisan. And in ancient Egypt, the Israelites were told to take the lamb on that day, to leave it outside of their house, and then to slaughter it and eventually paint the doorposts and the lintel of their house so that God would see that they had followed his rulings and would protect their house on the 15th day, which is the day of Passover itself. And so Shabbat HaGadol commemorates the beginning of that act, that brazen act of taking the god of the Egyptians, tying it outside of their house for all the Egyptians to see that the Jews had rejected their pagan ideas and were to believe in one God. And so this year's Shabbat HaGadol is actually on the very date that Shabbat HaGadol is meant to commemorate, the beginning of those 5 days that lead up to Passover. And perhaps the most significant part of this is that it was meant to be done in people's homes. It was meant to be done for every family. And so perhaps this year, like no other year before, we're all going to be celebrating Pesach the way that it was done in Egypt, huddled in our homes, protected in our homes with our families, please God, with our loved ones, knowing that there is a plague running rampant outside of our homes, but knowing that in our homes, God will protect us, that we will be safe. And so we pray on this Shabbat HaGadol and on this Pesach that each of us should be protected in our homes, and that please God, with the passing of Passover, so too will the plague pass over our homes and the places in which we live, and that following this Passover we'll be able to return outside once again and return to our lives. And please God, I look forward to seeing you all returning here to the synagogue as well. And so I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, a Shabbat HaGadol Sameach, if I can, and wish everyone to continue to be well, and may these few days leading up to Passover be days of health and happiness within each of your homes as we weather this plague, this storm together. Shabbat Shalom.